Hello and welcome to Face2Face on City TV. My name is Omaru Sandamado. On Face2Face today, my guest is a special aide to the former President John Dramani Mahama, who is also the NDC flag bearer. The campaign is thickening ahead of election 2024. What is the former president offering to Ghanaians as an alternative to the Breaking the Eight agenda by Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and the NPP? That's the conversation we're having on Face2Face. Please stay with us and enjoy. My guest served as Deputy Minister for Information, and then the ministry was renamed Ministry of Communication. He continues to be Deputy Minister of Communication. I don't know if much has changed there. Maybe there was a measure of the two, communication and information. So I don't know. I just say former Deputy Communication Information Minister. But currently, he is NDC parliamentary candidate for Abra Asebu Kwamankese in the Central Region. In 2020, he lost that seat with less than 100 votes. How is he faring this time around? And how is his candidate as well faring, the Honorable John Dramani Mahama? Felix, Kwakye, Ofosu, you're welcome to Face2Face.
Thank you, Maru.
How are you?
Well, I'm doing great. I cannot complain.
I saw you celebrating, was it 40 years?
No, it's 42 years, actually. So it turns out I'm not exactly very young anymore.
So you're not a baby with the sharp teeth like
well, I've never been, except that in this society, because of conservatism, we are a bit non-receptive to young people who are assertive, who are able to join the discourse. So I guess that over time, people have come to appreciate that there's a role for young people to play in the national discourse, and that there's no difficulty with hearing out young people.
You've been out of government for close to 8 years. Maybe you've gone to school, gotten a PhD or something. Are you working on something like that?
Oh no, I've been out and about. I've been actively involved in politics. I've been working in this office, which is President Mahama's office, which is a significant position, I must say, because the office has to be run. We are talking about a former president whose outfit has to be organized, and he continues to feature prominently in the country's politics. And I am absolutely certain that he's on his way to becoming president once again. And for that reason, you need a core staff who are able to organize around him and ensure that
how is he doing? He campaigned in 2008, campaigned in 2012, 2016, 2020, and he's campaigning again. Is he not tired?
No, I mean, the situation of the country is such that he cannot possibly be tired. We live in very, very dire times. Indeed, just before this interview, I chanced on a news item on your website, citynewsroom.com, in which it was said that traders now cannot restock their goods. They cannot pay bank loans because of the precipitous fall in the value of the cedi. And if you have a situation where the economy is in shambles, we are unable to pay our debts. There's been this excruciating financial haircut which has affected over 1 million people. Pensioners have to picket and stage demonstrations so that the meager earnings that they get from their bonds are paid them. We have a situation where unemployment has skyrocketed. We are talking close to 14% unemployment. At the last reckoning, inflation has gone up. Interest rates are extremely high, perhaps the highest they've been in living memory. And so many other problems that have made life hell for the people of Ghana. In circumstances like that, someone like President Mahama cannot possibly be tied. And there's a reason why he's throwing his hat into the ring once again, because he has a requisite experience and stamina and the know-how to, first of all, ensure that there is stability, turn the situation around, and deliver the Ghana that we all want, which is one in which the economy works, one in which those who govern show respect for those that they govern, one in which there's accountability, one in which decency is restored to public office, and one in which there is shared prosperity because things are properly managed. Okay. That is a responsibility that he deems it necessary to shoulder at this point in time. And in all honesty, I think that he is the best man for the job at this particular moment.
The experience part is kind of a double-edged sword for him. So he's experienced, he's done this before, but there are people who say that that's actually the reason why he should not come back. I've heard people who identify as neutrals, even people who call themselves MP people, who say, honestly, they think they need a change, but if NDC had changed its flag bearer, then they would be convinced to vote for them. But the fact that it is still John Mahama, they do not think that they should vote for the NDC and John Mahama. What would you say to such a person?
You see, first of all, I have maintained that every election is a referendum on the incumbents. So the first point of call is to assess whether the government that you voted for has done what it ought to do, whether at the very least they've been able to maintain what they came to meet. Now, there's no rational assessment of the current situation that would justify the continuous stay of the NPP in power. And I think that an overwhelming majority of Ghanaians agree, even NPP people agree, that they have not been up to the task. In fact, their own candidate has sought to flee from the very shambolic record that they have delivered over the period that they've been in power. Now, once that assessment is done, you then look at the next best alternative and see whether there is anything in that alternative that inspires hope and confidence.
That alternative, Gabi Ochodaku describes that alternative as scary. He keeps using that hashtag.
Well, I'm not sure that Gabi is the right person to quote, seeing that he's been front and center of the absolute mess that his cousin is. Well, he's been front and center. You see, I mean, you know, I also know that one does not necessarily need to hold a position in government to be influential. Everybody knows that he's been front and center of the mess, the corruption, the sleaze, the nepotism, the deliberate near criminal mismanagement of the Ghanaian economy. So I'm not sure that it lies in his mouth to determine for the people of Ghana which alternative they choose. But the point is that any assessment of the NDC's tenure under John Mahama, or even if you like President Mahama, vis-a-vis what the NPP has delivered, will show that President Mahama stands head and shoulders above anybody who is aspiring.
Talk to me about John Mahama.
Well, John Mahama was in power. At the time that he left office, there were things that you could use to measure the state of the country. I mean, for one, we were not bankrupt as an economy. Our debt was manageable. It was 120 billion Ghana cedis at the time. If you looked at it in terms of our GDP and our ability to repay, it was just about half of our GDP. We were servicing our debt on time. Inflation was 15%. It was not the lowest, but it certainly wasn't the highest. I think that it was within a manageable range. The exchange rate was $1 to just around 4 cedis. And other indices showed that things were not as bad as we have now. Unemployment was 8% at the time. And if you look at the vital statistics that one can use to assess the state of health of the economy was in fairly good shape. We had experienced some headwinds in the years prior, but as of 2016, when he was leaving office, the country was in much better shape. Now, if you look at all sectors of the economy, education, he had done massive investments to ensure that Ghanaian children have access to education. If you look at health, people still credit him for how we were able to survive COVID, because we all know that but for the investments that he made in expansive health infrastructure, there was no way that we were going to weather the storm as far as COVID was concerned. If you look at energy, I mean, we had a perennial power difficulty, which had lasted for decades. We had experienced power outages in the 80s, it had happened in the 90s, in the early 2000s, and President before we saw it. He took a bold step and ensured that he put in the sort of investment that curtailed that difficulty and made it impossible for generation capacity to be a reason why we would go into power outages. If you look at the communication sector, if you look at the ICT space, if you look at housing, look at water, I'm sure you followed the facts, and you do know that by the time that President Mahama left office, close to 80% of, in fact, the exact figure is 76% of Ghanaians had access to potable water. That figure has dipped because this government has failed to replicate that kind of investment. So in almost every sector of our national life, things were much better than we have today.
Including in governance specifically?
Absolutely. Look at the corruption perception index.
Specific corruption?
Absolutely. Look at the corruption perception index.
Ghana was a butt of jokes when it came to
well, look at our performance then. His worst performance is in fact better than the best performance of this government. And if you look at his proactivity, the zeal with which he went after people who were alleged to be corrupt under him. I mean, you know about the Abu Gapele case. You know that Abu Gapele is a stalwart of the NDC. In many ways, he was friends with President Mahama. But President Mahama did not hesitate to put him before the courts when allegations of graft were made against him. You saw the swiftness with which he acted in the Victoria Hammer case. And that is a case that people like myself have even wondered whether it qualifies for corruption. There's a woman who was expressing a desire at some point in life to have a certain amount of money. She didn't say that she was going to steal money, but because she was a public office holder and President Mahama deemed that kind of narrative to be inconsistent with public expectation, he immediately fired him. That has not been the case under this government. Indeed, we have a president in the shape of President Akufo-Addo who has been all too willing to shield corrupt appointees. In many cases, he makes it impossible for the anti-corruption bodies to do any meaningful work because he prejudices the outcome of their investigations. And he has flatly refused to punish persons who are known to have been engaged in corruption. So there's no basis for comparison, really, between the MPP and anything that President Mahama did whilst in office. President Mahama, on every important indicator, completely outperforms the MPP. Were there difficulties under his tenure? Absolutely. And you see, it speaks to his own honesty.
He took us to the IMF.
Well, but we had been to the IMF 16 times before we went to the IMF again in 2015. But Umaru, there's absolutely nothing wrong with going to the IMF.
Really?
It is a point that we had made consistently when we were in power. The point is that Ghana has been a member of the IMF since 1957.
But it was mismanagement that
well, no. Again, you need to look at the state of the economy at the time. You see, you go to the IMF when you see that there are some headwinds, you are facing some difficulty. That in and of itself is not wrong. What had become the problem is that propagandists like Bawumia and others in the MPP had made going to the IMF almost seem like a demonic move. Now, lo and behold, they come into office, completely run down the economy. They refuse to go to the IMF in time and come around to that decision at a time when the economy was in absolutely terrible shape. There's a reason why we have struggled to recover, even after going to the IMF. But you find that when we went to the IMF sometime in 2015, within a reasonable space of time, we saw meaningful recovery, so that by the time we left office, the indicators were in much better shape than we have today. So there were difficulties under President Mahama. There will be difficulties under government. But I'm sure that when Ghanaians do an assessment of his own response, the kind of leadership that he gave, the honesty with which he approached the matters, his willingness to level up with the people, be open, be transparent, and speak to the people in a manner that will convince them that yes, there are difficulties, but we are doing ABCD to arrest them. That is completely missing.
Business people will not forget the doomsaw that saw people go out on the streets, businesses collapsing, people being sacked from their workplaces, people shutting down their businesses simply because of the power problem. Even though he solved it before leaving, people would still not forget that he took Ghanaians through 2 years of excruciating. Well,
Umaru, you are the journalist, so I'm sure that in these matters, facts is absolutely important. I spoke earlier about the perennial problem that doomsaw was. What had happened is that over the course of time, over the course of 2 decades, we had failed as a country to ramp up generation capacity. In the mid-80s, under the PNDC, we had an experience with doomsaw. It lasted about a year or so. In the late 90s, between 97 or 98, we had a year's worth of doomsaw. Under President Akufo, between 2007 and 2008, we had doomsaw. So it meant that there was a particular problem that was causing that particular issue. Now, under President Mahama, sometime in late 2012, doomsaw reared its head again. But he spoke to the matter. Indeed, he took personal responsibility and said that to the extent that he was leader, he was not going to shirk his responsibility and blame others, but he was going to do what was necessary to address the problem. At the time, the problem we had was a massive generation shortfall. So you find that he scrambled around to ensure that we met that shortfall. In addition to that, he put in buffers that would ensure that financial problems that often had come to dog that sector were addressed. That is why he put in ESLA. And ESLA today, if I were to be conservative, has yielded not less than 25 billion Ghana cedis since it was instituted in 2015. In addition to this, he said that fuel was a challenge. It was expensive and therefore imposed a bit of a burden on the government if it had to be bought. So he put in a gas processing plant to give us 120 million standard cubic feet of gas a day, which ensured that we cut fuel imports for the purpose of power generation by as much as $300 million per annum. Now, these are significant contributions that any succeeding government should build on. Now, what has happened is that over the period, President Akufo-Addo, Bawumia, the energy minister, and others have seen the energy sector as a milking cow. So, one corrupt deal after the other has been slammed down the throat of operators in that sector. And it has resulted in a situation where, as we speak, the government is unable to find money to buy fuel. And you will not be surprised because the economy is bankrupt. They can't even pay bondholders. So they cannot buy fuel. They do not have a problem with generation shortfall, which other governments, including President Kufuor, including President Rawlings, including President Mahama, faced. They have everything in line that should enable them to work.
It's the running that is the problem.
What has happened is that they have mismanaged the economy. So they cannot find the money to buy fuel to power the plants. That was not the case in previous times. So when you do the assessment, you must understand what is causing the problem. In addition to this, look at deals like the Gensa deal. Look at the way that they brought in companies that were formed overnight to take over fuel importation for power generation. Look at the way that the PDS matter was handled. Look at the Ameri innovation scandal, which was going to cost us something around $1 billion, but for a timely intervention of NDC MPs. So, in totality, it is the massive mismanagement of the sector. As I speak to you, in spite of ESLA, which I told you has yielded over 25 billion Ghana cedis, this government owes close to $2 billion to IPPs, to persons or entities that supply us fuel. WAPCO, every now and then, you find that WAPCO issues a statement threatening to shut down their pipelines. And it has happened on a number of occasions. And when they have done that, we have been plunged into darkness. Okay. You remember the issue with the Asogli power plant, where they also issued a threat to cut power production because they were owed huge money. So the whole sector is in a mess. And I'm not sure that the same could be said of that sector under President Mahama. So yes, whilst we acknowledge that there was difficulty under Dumso, everybody who has followed that sector and will be fair to the facts will know that in terms of efforts to address that matter comprehensively, John Mahama gets the plaudits.
Constitutionally, each person is mandated to hold office, presidential office, for just 2 terms. President Mahama was vice president for 4 years. At the time, we were told that he was essentially running the government, even though there was a president. He even managed to, be president for 6 months or so. Now he has also done another 4 years as full president. What is there that he has not finished or completed that he's coming to complete, for which reason he must come back and not someone else from the NDC fold?
I think that we know his record. That record is much better than anything the NPP has to offer, without question. But you look at the times we are in. You look at the instability with the economy. You look at the suffering, the pain, the anguish that people are going through. You look at the deliberate mismanagement. You look at the wanton waste of national resources. You look at arrogance of power, the complete disregard for the sensibilities of the people. You look at corruption. You look at how education has been run down. You look at how the health sector is struggling.
Education has had a major intervention.
But education has been run down. I happen to be contesting elections in the Abu Communication constituency, and I can assure you that all the senior high schools in that constituency, all the basic schools in that constituency are struggling. So every now and then, they have to come to me and others who they deem to be prominent to bail them out on any number of issues. Now, if the education sector was working well, that would not be the situation. Even the production of an academic calendar is a major challenge for this government. Umaru, you and your news organization have covered extensively the problems with feeding in the senior high schools. You know that they live in abject squalor. Some of the schools have problems that are so basic that government should be able to resolve them. They are unable to do so.
You do admit.
So this double track, for instance, now it leaves one confused whenever you want to follow the academic system. For about 4 terms, this government has been unable to buy textbooks for basic school pupils. Umaru, at the last reckoning, there were over 1 million pupils who do not have access to desks. So they have to sit on the bare floor. Some have to lie on their stomach. Some have to make improvise and sit on cement blocks and what have you to receive tuition. We have a situation where capitation grant has been in arrears for 6 terms. Now, these are problems that did not exist under President Mahama. So when I say the education sector has been run down, there's evidence to back it. And every Ghanaian who has lived in this country over the last 8 years or so would agree with me.
But you see, Ghanaians will also agree that for the past 7 years, they've had their wards being educated at the senior high school level for free. That free SHS policy, you cannot underestimate its impact. Again. Don't forget that these people are going to be registering now to vote.
I can assure you that.
Is that not scary for you?
I can assure you that if those senior high school students were allowed to make a choice of their own volition, they will vote massively against the government. You see, education goes beyond merely paying fees. So when you pay the fees of the child, there are many other things that should come together to give that child a certain minimum quality of education. That is non-existent. You speak about fees. Umaru, again, I'm running for parliament. So I know that in the constituency where I'm running for parliament, on a daily basis, I am confronted with parents who have prospectors, some of whom have to pay as much as 8,000 cedis in order to buy the items that have been listed for them to buy for their awards. Now, if somebody is poor and therefore cannot pay about 1,000 or 1,500 cedis as fees per term. How do you expect that person to pay 8,000 Ghana cedis? In addition to this, so I'm saying that education goes beyond paying fees. When you pay the fees and everything else is in disarray, you cannot have education that is worth talking about.
But at least one burden has been taken.
But I'm saying that it goes beyond paying. If it were fees alone, I'm not sure that we will have the problems that we are having today. So when you pay fees and you can't supply textbooks, for instance, you pay fees and the children do not have food. You pay fees and the food they eat, with the greatest respect to everybody watching us, it's not food that even animals in some places will accept as food that is fit for them to eat. You pay fees, and after that, there are bedbugs infestations in schools and government cannot deal with it. You pay fees and they do not have basic equipment. There's a school in my constituency, Mori Senior Technical School. It is one of the community day schools that President Mahama built before and commissioned before he left office. You should go to that place and see the squalor in which the students in that school live. They do not have basic things. As I speak to you, they do not have a single laboratory where they can do science practicals. So what is the use of paying fees if important components in the education ecosystem are not in place to guarantee Ghanaian school children a certain minimum quality of education?
Okay. This is Face2Face on City TV. My name is Umaru Sandamad. My guest, Felix Kwakye Ofosu, former Deputy Minister for Communication, is a special aide to former President Mahama. We've been talking about the legacy of John Mahama. We'll come back. We'll look at the Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia campaign. He's busy across the country doing a nationwide tour. Is that scaring the NDC folks? Stay with us. You're welcome back. This Face2Face on City TV. My guest is special aide to former President Mahama. The campaign is heating up. We are counting down to election 2024 and looking at the various options that are on the table for Ghanaians to choose from. He's been, my guest has been recounting for us what former President Mahama did when he was in office and why he should be given the chance. Let's look at the MPP campaign now. Sure. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has introduced bold visions or bold agenda that he outdoored at the UPSA, and following that, he's going across the country and he's speaking to NPP people, chiefs, clergy people, telling them the great things that the NPP has done and the things that he intends to build on. Do these things scare you sometimes when you watch how, for instance, I was in Wale Wale yesterday, the crowd was huge, massive.
Umar, I can assure you that I, in my Abu Asibu Kamanke's constituency, have put more crowds, bigger crowds than what Bawumia said yesterday. So, but I've been campaigning, I've been running for office. Then in the last couple of weeks, I've been holding a series of public events. I can assure you that I've pulled more people than Dr. Bawumia. But that is even beside the point. For me, I'm sure you also do know that crowds really do not matter in campaigns. It's just that it makes for good aesthetics. But beyond that, it really does not make a difference in elections. You see, ordinarily, I like to speak about my own candidates. He's tabled a number of propositions. He's spoken about the 24-hour economy. He's spoken about strategies to ensure that we address the huge problem that youth unemployment has become. He has spoken about stabilizing the economy and ensuring that there's prudent management. He has spoken about constitutional and governance reforms that will ensure that this wholesale bastardization and politicization of the state institutions that President Akufo-Addo and Bawumia have sought to do becomes a thing of the past, and that we have institutions that are fit for purpose that realize that the mandate they hold is to serve the interests of the country and not the ends of the new patriotic party. He has also spoken about abolishing ex gratia, for instance, which is one of the payments that Ghanaians have expressed grievances about over the period. He has spoken about the 1 million coders program that is aimed at leveraging ICT to offer some employment opportunities for the young people. They say he doesn't have one pivotal message that he's driving. First of all, I see that there are many people who...
And that everything is 24 hours.
No. He has spoken about the 24-hour economy. He has explained it at length. He's spoken to various interest groups who have a direct stake in a policy like that. But you see, what President Mahama will not do is to engage in meaningless slogan like his opponent wants to do. And I see that you mentioned some so-called bold solutions. But you see, Bawumia's candidate, and I have maintained this for a number of years, his candidacy was never going to be tenable because of the abysmal performance he has put out. There is a man who in 2016 projected himself as a be-all and end-all of economic management, and that he was a panacea to every economic difficulty we have.
It is not his government.
Why? But whose government is it? Is it my government? No, it is the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government. No, the government is... Umaru, he was the one who mounted platforms to hold lectures. What was he doing? Was he engaging in a comedy skit? No. He was the one who went on record. He mounted platforms. He claimed to have had a chair in economic governance at the Central University. He held about 2 or 3 lectures in which, among others, he sought to lecture the NDC on economic management. He made firm commitments about addressing the economic problems we had. Since he's been in power, he's been the head of the economic management team. He was the one who publicly told Ghanaians that he was leading a stellar team of eminent persons who were going to manage the economy. Indeed, since they've been in power, on many occasions that they deemed to have chalked some economic gains, he has taken credit. Even President Akufo-Addo has showered him with plaudits for supposed economic gains. So even the idea that he now seeks to run away from that responsibility is one of the reasons why he must be thrown out in 2024. You see, the last thing Ghanaians need is a leader who does not take responsibility. Someone who brags, talks in lofty terms, is given a mandate, underperforms, and then shirks responsibility. Was it you and I who asked President Akufo-Addo to tell us in February 2018 that whatever economic gains had been made was down to the strong leadership of Bawumia? Was it not Bawumia who put out a lecture? Indeed, if you go on his Twitter handle, he actually uploaded the content of that lecture in 2014. And it's been 10 years since he held that lecture in the Central University, where he spoke about stabilizing the cedi. As I speak to you, the cedi exchanges for 15 to $1, which is a catastrophic collapse. Something that has pushed Ghanaian businesses and households into severe suffering. That is why this morning, your own website, citynewsroom.com, has published that Ghanaian traders who import wares to sell are unable to restock. They are unable to buy products to sell. They are unable to service the loans that they used to finance the purchases in the first place, and they are struggling.
But you know the principle of the backstopping with the leader.
Is it Umaru?
He was in the government. Yes. He was in cabinet.
City TV, I beg your pardon. Yes. City TV owns your station. Yes. This program is being held under the auspices. Yes. If you underperform as host, I beg your pardon. If as host you are not up to the task, you are not able to ask incisive questions, you are not able to probe me, you give me a field day, surely you are not going to blame your CEO for it. Yes, he recruited you. But responsibility for steering this program is yours.
Yes, and but you know whether he's been...
Umaru, even ministers of state, DCs, CEOs, and others charged with specific responsibility in government are liable to be held to account for their stewardship. Bawumia was the one who told us that he had economic expertise. It was not for any reason
but
that... If you let me land, how is that the case? Why? President Akufo-Addo was in Parliament in February 2018. He told us that the economy was making progress because of Bawumia's leadership of the economic management team. Okay. The president indeed is the one who takes ultimate responsibility. So when he tells you that Bawumia is in charge of the economy, who am I to dispute it?
But Bawumia again has told Kwame Safaka on Peace FM that he did not think that we should levy money in people's pockets or people's phones. He was speaking in 2020.
Yes. No, I beg your pardon.
And then subsequently his government does that.
Umaru, I'm saying
that means that it's not everything he brings to the table that is taken.
No. To begin with, everybody who is a member of the MPP, so long as they stand on the ticket of the MPP, will carry the baggage of the government that the MPP has formed. It's a fundamental principle in electoral politics. Number 2, we are talking about a man who had a specific designation, head of the economic management team. This is a man who did not just accept that position and retreat into the corridors of power to perform his task. He went out there to tell everybody that he and his team had what it takes to manage the economy. When the economy takes a nosedive, nobody should seek to rewrite the script. And I'm saying that the very idea that he seeks to run away from responsibility is one of the reasons why he must be voted out. When President Mahama was president, he was not the energy minister, was he? He did not pick up clippers or pliers and cut the electricity wire so that we don't have electricity. But he stood up and took responsibility. That is what the leader does. Now, if you have a situation where, in addition to being hopelessly incompetent, the leader also displays cowardice, like the way Bawumia is going about it. He does not want to take responsibility. He is running away. How is it that the man who is not responsible for anything in this government is the one that they credit with so-called digitalization? How is it
because that has been his agenda?
What agenda? Bawumia, when they were campaigning...
He's worked on the drones that supply blood and all of those things.
So, in one breath, he is responsible for something. In another breath, he is responsible for nothing. When they were campaigning in 2016, nobody broached the subject of ICT in relation to Bawumia. And I work in the ICT space. I know for a fact that many of the things he seems to claim credit for are not his doing. There is work that precedes, and I know that for a fact. If you had time, I'll take you through them one after the other. But the point I'm making is that when they were campaigning in 2016, they projected him as the man to fix the economy. In fact, President Akufo-Addo is on record to have told us that the reason why he tapped him was that he had economic knowledge and that among other things, he will face things like the city. I've also told you here, and I'm going to repeat it, that since they've been in government, the president himself, who you say the buck stops with, has told us that Bawumia is the man in charge of the economy. When the economy tanks and he runs away, he has displayed an inability to lead.
But at that time, Bawumia did not speak to this claim by President Akufo-Addo.
No, he did. He did.
Now he has a voice, and he says, listen, it's not everything I had control over. I'm just a mate.
Umaru, I'm saying.
Yes,
I'm saying.
And a mate, we know.
Umaru, I'm saying that the principle is that anybody that the MPP presents as their candidate in the 2024 elections is going to bear the baggage of the horrible underperformance.
But that person can also say that these are some of the things I disagreed with, such as e-levy.
No, Bawumia
I disagreed with them and they were still implemented anyway.
For the record, Bawumia has never publicly stated a disagreement with the e-levy. In fact, his spokesperson, Gideon Bwaku, my good friend, has publicly stated that Bawumia supports e-levy. The then information minister, Kojo Oponkroma, who is the accredited spokesperson of government, said that Bawumia was part of the decision to implement the e-levy.
Of course, he was in cabinet, so he was part.
Absolutely. So
it doesn't mean that he personally agreed with it.
To take Bawumia serious, as he has attempted to run away from responsibility, there must be a record of his public disagreement. Yes, but there's no record of that.
No, but hold on. Just hold on. No, let me come to
let me make the point.
No.
You see, we've had a vice president. We've had a vice president in the shape of Kwakye, who disagreed with his government. He went public. Indeed, he was even prepared to go toe-to-toe.
And where did that end him?
But at the very least, when you mention Akaye's name, and he tells you that he disagreed with government policy, everybody agrees because there's a record of it. Bawumia has no such record.
But let me tell you what you know the secrecy of cabinet meetings. You're saying that he should come out of cabinet meetings and call a press conference and say, listen, we just finished cabinet, there was a proposal to do e-levy, I disagreed.
Kwakye did that. Today, he has gone down in the annals of history as a man of principle. Forget about whether he was right or wrong. But in terms of principle, that he disagreed with his government and was willing to stand by his convictions, he will get an A when you mark him. Bawumia will get an F. I'm saying that this claim that he disagrees with anything is contrived. It is merely meant to ensure that he does not carry the baggage of the MPP. You are telling me, Umaru, so you are telling me in all honesty, with all your experience following politics in Ghana, that if the economy was working well, Bawumia will not tell us that he's the one responsible for it, and that he will not take credit for it.
What I'll tell you is that since he started speaking, where he's got his voice and is allowed to speak outside cabinet, he has told us what his position on matters are. For instance, the issue of the LGBTQ. He spoke at the Aide and announced publicly what his position, which may not necessarily fit to government.
You and I know that again was contrived. It was basically forced. He has spoken almost 2-3 years late in the day. You understand the point I'm making? The second point is that, and I will stress it, any attempt to exculpate him, extricate him from responsibility for the mismanagement of the economy will fail. He was the cheerleader for all the disastrous policies that have resulted in the economic collapse. He was the one who they sent publicly to speak about their record. In fact, as head of the economic management team, in 2019, he held a town hall meeting to announce economic policies, to tell us that he had done ABCD leading to supposed improvements in the economy. In the year 2020, he did a similar thing in Kumasi. He went on the road to tell people that he was doing ABCD as head of the economic management team and they were succeeding. When the economy tanks, we cannot be told that he was not. So, Imari, you are telling me that the president of Ghana, with the greatest respect to him, suddenly got crazy and decided that the man who was managing the economy for him, whose brains he was tapping to manage the economy, he was not going to listen to him again so that the economy collapses. You mean that President Akufo-Addo wants the economy to collapse? Okay. So he will listen to Bawumia. Is that the narrative you have used?
What I can ask you is that Akufo-Addo is a man whose name is on the government. He appoints ministers. They respond to him.
That is true.
The budget that is presented to Parliament is his budget.
That is true.
Every minister brings their file to Akufo-Addo. They don't bring it to Bawumia.
That is true.
At what point are you going to hold Akufo-Addo responsible and leave Bawumia alone?
Akufo-Addo is every inch as responsible as Bawumia.
No, but are you saying that they are equally responsible? You cannot do that.
You see, the man, I'm speaking to the man's own words. You say that he's
You were deputy minister.
Yes, I was.
Are you saying that everything that happened at your ministry, you should be blamed the same way
I was a man, listen.
Is supposed to be blamed?
Yes, but for instance, when you were in government, I was given responsibility for government information dissemination. If I fail at that task, you blame me. Of course, you can also blame my boss. But you cannot extricate me and say that my boss is the one to blame. That is dishonest. And I'm saying that indeed, one of the reasons why I am so opposed to Bawumia's candidacy. It's the dishonesty, the disrespect for the intelligence.
Not because he serves as a candidate that would demolish your campaign. He's proven that he's been a great campaigner.
The criticism of Bawumia started the minute he assumed office as vice.
Because you see him as a threat.
I never believed that he had any capacity as he claimed in 2016. You see, unfortunately for us, and let me criticize you in the media a bit. You see, one of the things that you do not do is that you don't carry out sufficient scrutiny of people. People say things and they get away with it. Why? The man was making claims about the economy in 2016. You recall that there were many times that we challenged him. The response we got was that he was a PhD in economics, he knew what he was talking about, and so we should be disregarded.
He asked you 170 questions, so you didn't respond.
Who did he ask that 170 questions?
The vice president, the late.
So if Bawumia is telling us that the vice president essentially is useless, does nothing in government, why was he asking the vice president, not the president? Was there not a president? Amy Sata was head of the economic management team. He was vice president, the same position Bawumia holds. Yet Bawumia leveled 170 questions at him, not the president or Mahama at the time. So if Bawumia is of the view that the vice president does nothing and that he does not have influence, he doesn't manage the economy, why did he channel the questions? So he was wasting everybody's time. So indeed, the matter that you yourself has highlighted now is an indication of the dishonesty and duplicity of Bawumia. And you see, one of the things that you look out for, beyond the hard cold facts of ability, are character traits like honesty, responsibility. You see, leadership is about responsibility. Sometimes it is pleasant, sometimes it's unpleasant. Sometimes things go well, sometimes things don't go well. But whether they go well or not, a leader must stand, must be accountable, must hold himself responsible. That is the only way that people can trust that you have their back. What you don't want is a flip-flopper, somebody who believes that he holds that office in jest. How are we told that the good things in this government are attributable to him, but the bad things are attributable to President Akufo-Addo? President Akufo-Addo is not running. That is why they have the confidence now to heap blame on him, because he won't suffer electoral consequences for it. But I don't think you in the media should be entertaining or encouraging this narrative that Bawumia is not to blame for what we are doing. He says everybody in the MPP is to blame. It is the reason why I have continuously said that anybody they put on that ticket
he says,
will carry the can.
He says he did not have the steering wheel at the time. He's asking to be given the wheel now. Listen, he says he should be given the wheel now, and that he's going to chart his own path and going to be his own man. You don't believe that?
The first point there is that, you see, to be given greater responsibility, you must have excelled at a lesser responsibility. So you are the host of this program now. For you to become general manager of CTF or perhaps the CEO in future, your record of performance in this particular role must be taken into account. We cannot have a situation where the man who was given responsibility for managing the economy messes it up and tells us that we should give the whole country to him. As I speak to you, have you noticed that he is unable to mention the very things that rolled off his tongue when he was in opposition? Today, he can't speak about the exchange rate. He cannot speak about public debt.
He has explained that.
He has explained that.
He says that statistically speaking, they're doing better than you did.
Again, Umaru is yet another reason why he should be thrown out. You see, with the greatest respect to you and everybody, no sane person can sustain that argument. You are telling me that if you go to the Forest Bureau today and you exchange $1 for 15 cedis, it is better than when you did so for 4 cedis. That's what Bawumia is telling us. And Umaru, you think that this ought to be tolerated? This is a person in whose hands a country must be entrusted. That a 15 to $1 exchange rate is better than a $4 to $1 rate. How can we entertain such insults?
Let's look at the campaign. He's been on the campaign trail already, busily demolishing your candidate.
What is he demolishing?
And even you know, espousing new things. So
what is he demolishing?
For instance, he talks about being his own.
No, what is he demolishing?
He's attacking your candidate. In 2020, when they went to the polls, he gained as many as 3 out of the 7 seats in your candidate's home region.
Umaru.
In his own region, he protected the...
Umaru.
Is that not something you should worry about? That the North is supposed to be a base of
when we finished the elections in 2020, where were we in terms of the parliamentary election?
It was
they had to go and beg an independent candidate just so that they can beat us by 1. That was a disastrous performance. Indeed, in many jurisdictions...
But in the North, he did well.
No, but you see, the point is that there are several factors that account for that. But a candidate's impact must be felt everywhere. If your impact is in only one place, you have no business.
But the North is your base. He has penetrated the North and the Zongos, and he's taken over all those places.
If a candidate's impact is in one place, he has no business on the ticket, because the candidate must be acceptable to everybody, because you need everybody's votes. Number 2, there is no empirical basis for the claim that he has influenced votes in the North, because people like President Akufo-Addo himself have done well in the North in recent times. So we can look into that. But if you tell me that it is because of you, must provide me the basis. Number two, this bit about demolition, what has he demolished really? Why? You are going toe-to-toe with a man who has a better record now. How can you demolish him? When President Mahama was vice president.
He has spoken about the teacher allowance that you scrapped.
Well, he was disgraced by a student. You see, again, petty politicking, pedestrian politicking, shallow populism is what Bawumia stands for. One president says that, look, instead of giving you an allowance, I'll give you a loan so that it is sustainable and we are able to make savings that we can plow back into expanding the frontiers of nursing and teacher training. You say, no, I will pay the allowances. Students stay in school for 3 years, and in the entire duration of their stay in school, you don't pay them. What is the use of an allowance that you don't pay? Yesterday, when the clip came out, was he able to answer the question? He was now telling the student that he was going to find out from the Ministry of Finance.
Yeah, because that should be the right thing.
So when it comes to payment, he has to go and find out. Umar, you tell me, what is the use of allowances that are not paid? If you say you are going to restore it, is the solution to it not paying it? So if for 3 years, you have kept these students in penury, you've kept them in hardship, and you are telling them you've restored the allowance, what value does it have for those students? You see, that is why you in the media must lead the effort to clamp down on this shallow populism that Bawumia practices. Nothing he says should be taken seriously. Why? Yes. He goes about talking about gold for oil. At the time that he was saying, he
said it has stabilized the fuel prices at the
only last week, I'm sure you bought fuel for 15 cedis a liter. At the time that there was no gold for oil under President Mahama, it was 3 cedis a liter. So what use is that slogan to us? And we must guard it, and I'm sure, absolutely certain, that Ghanaians will throw him out in 2024 for the reason that they have experienced him as vice president. I was making the point about President Mahama's record. You see, it's important because we speak about so-called demolition. President Mahama was vice president. He was head of the commandment team. Even if Bawumia has not been president before, and therefore you say we should not compare him at the level of a president. Let's compare him at the level of a vice president, the head of the EMT. What were the respective outcomes? Any single indicator you pick, President Mahama dwarfs Bawumia. Especially, pick the debt, pick the exchange rate, pick our debt servicing record, pick interest rates, and all the other indices that you can use. Bawumia does not hold a candle to President Mahama. So it is extremely important for you in the media to lead the fight and carry out scrutiny. And when you do that scrutiny, you will know that what the platform Bawumia offers is a shallow one, devoid of substance. And I am absolutely certain that Ghanaians have wised up to this empty sloganeering. And in 2024, they are going to choose substance over it. And that substance is represented by President Mahama.
This is Face2Face on City TV. We'll come back. I'll talk to him about his constituency. He's hoping to be in Parliament in 2025, Felix Kwakye Ofosu, Abra Sebu Kwame, because they ask him if the people there are ready for him, whether he's not going to suffer defeat like he did the last time. You're welcome back. This is Face2Face on City TV. Felix Kwakye Ofosu, why do you want to be an MP?
Well, I guess that there comes a time when one must respond to the call to serve. I come from a place called the Abra Sebu Kwame constituency. There's a constituency that, over the years, in my respectful view, has not had the sort of representation that they need. And it reflects in the quality of life of the people. When you go there now, you see that there's a lot of deprivation.
Is it a rural constituency?
Yeah, it is predominantly rural, even though we have a few urban areas. It is predominantly rural.
Are you on the coast or in the rural?
Well, it's an interesting, we are both on the coast and in the hinterland.
So you have a coastal
we have perhaps the biggest fishing community in Ghana, in the shape of Mori. And then we also have a vast agrarian
so Mori is in Abra.
It's in Abra, it's near Cape Coast. Okay. And we have a vast agrarian section too. So we straddle the divide, if you like. But there's a constituency that is very, very deprived. The quality of life is quite low. And I guess that one of the problems that has, or one of the reasons that has contributed to that is the lack of an adequate voice to put in a word for them, to represent them, to advocate for them, and ensure that we drive the sort of resources we need to the ground there in order to improve the living conditions of the people. So that is my key motivation for doing so. I made an attempt in 2020. I came pretty close. I lost by 176 votes. But it told me that...
Well, it was 176. Yes, I thought it was less than 100.
Yeah, but it told me that if on the first attempt I come that close, then perhaps there was something about my message that resonated with a significant section of the constituency. So to the extent that the one who won, or if you like the MPP, has not lived up to expectation and fulfilled the mandates that they were given, there was an opportunity to put my hat in the ring once again and give the people a reason to opt for me. And once I have that mandate, do much better and ensure that they get much better.
Are you going against the same candidate?
No, for some reason he lost the primary, so there's a new candidate. And I guess that in itself speaks volumes about the
maybe they've brought a stronger person to match.
I don't think so. I think that the incumbent MP who lost the primaries posed a much stiffer competition than this one. This one is yet to find his feet. He's relatively new, and he's not doing anything significantly different.
Okay, let's look at the politics of it.
Sure.
You were in the executive in the Akufo-Addo government.
No, the Mahama government.
And in the Mahama,
I wouldn't be in the Akufo-Addo government for all the tea in China.
It's your height, mate. You should take up a job in this government. It's not a bad idea.
Well, I'm ideologically opposed to him.
Okay. So sorry. In the Mahama government, you were in the executive, even though you were not an MP.
Sure.
Why do you need to be an MP now? Maybe I'm certain you will still be in the executive, whether or not you are. Well,
to begin with, it's the prerogative of the president of the day to choose who works with him in the executive. I don't have that mandate, so I think that we are jumping the gun when we speak that way. But the point is that you see, when you're in the executive, you have a national focus. So, for instance, I was Deputy Minister for Information, and then later Deputy Minister for Communication. My remit extended to the entirety of the country. When you are an MP, however, you are a specific representative of a specific geographical location and a specific people.
But if you do that and you take up an executive position, it may affect your delivery either nationally or locally.
I think that is a conversation we can have as to whether or not...
it's a constitutional dictate,
yes, but the point I've been making all day is that it is the president who decides who is there. I'm not in the executive by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. If the president so decides, then I'll respond to the call. But the point is that now I'm not in the executive. I'm striving to go to parliament, and there's a reason why I'm doing that. It is to represent my people and ensure that they get their fair share of the national cake.
Is it to go and make laws or to go and lobby for your constituency?
No, you see, I think it's an important point that you raise. You see, often it is said that MPs are not development agents. That is true. But if you are very familiar with the situation in many rural constituencies like mine, you find that if people like myself or those who aspire to go to parliament or the MP or DC or people of a certain prominence do not step into the breach to help out because of the gap that government leaves in those places, the suffering will be immense. So on a daily basis, you are confronted with a spectacle that you cannot overlook. Let me give you an example. In the last few weeks, I've been doing some work in the health sector in AEK, especially in Mori. So there's a Mori Health Center set up sometime in the 80s. Now, it is in such a dilapidated shape. The government is unresponsive to calls on them to renovate it and what have you.
You don't have a one district, one hospital?
No, we don't. We have a district hospital.
But no, I mean the agenda 111.
No, we don't. We have a district hospital, but it's not in Abudu, the district capital, but it's not in any good shape. But the point I was making about Mori, there's perhaps the most populous parts of the constituency, with anything between 50 to 60,000 residents, who are supposed to be served by a health center, which is dilapidated. Several calls on government to renovate it and spruce it up have fallen on deaf ears. So I stepped in. I renovated the maternity unit, gave them new equipment, and the situation has significantly improved. There's a place also called Abokumano, which is a suburb of Mobi. They didn't have any health facility, so I put a CHIPS compound there, even in my capacity as a parliamentary candidate, someone who has not gone to parliament.
But where are you getting the money from?
Well, I mean,
you're an opposition guy, you are poor.
Well, that is true, but there are well many people that you engage in order to ensure that you pull. You see, what you have to be is to be a resourceful person, not necessarily a wealthy person. When you are resourceful, it means that you have adequate contacts. You have people that you can engage.
But the view is that if you are pumping that money in the ground now,
you see, the point is that
if you win, you're going to steal that money back.
You don't have to. I have not had to steal money in order to put up the clinic or renovate the health center. I have not had to. Many of the things that I've done in the constituency, I have not had to do it from stealing. So why do I need to steal when I'm in a position of influence? You understand the point I'm making? You just have to be resourceful. You don't have to be wealthy. And nobody does these things from their pockets necessarily. You need to be able to pull resources together from various places. I believe in ethical politics, so I'm not sure that stealing is something that we should
So your position is that...
But the position I'm making is that, yes, the MP is not necessarily a development, but for places like that, where they lag behind in many, many key human development indicators, you have to go the extra mile of stepping into the breach yourself to pull resources, in some cases, to fix specific problems. Whilst doing that, you also need to have a heavy enough voice that will get the recognition and attention required to compel duty bearers to respond to specific needs in the constituency. I believe that is what I offer, which currently is missing in the scheme of things in the constituency.
I'm sensing that because of the name of your constituency, it has 3 major traditional areas. Is that correct?
That is true. So there's Abura.
Yes.
Abura, where I come from.
So what is the main agenda you have for each of these
Abura,
3?
Abura is the largest traditional area, but it's mainly agrarian. So they are into farming, citrus, palm, cassava. If you come to the coast, Maurice in Asebu, which is the second traditional area, and they basically are concerned with fishing. And then there's Kwamankese, who are also basically agrarian. Perhaps the most deprived part of the constituency because they are relatively younger. And attention often tends to focus on the larger Asebu and Abura. I think that we need to strike a certain balance. So for instance, President Mahama was there about 3 months ago to campaign. One of their biggest problems is that they don't have a senior high school. There are 5 senior high schools, including Agri and Moria, by the way. Mori has one. There's one in the district capital called Abraman. There's one in Aswanse Technical. It's a famous technical institute. And then there's one in my hometown, Abakrampa Senior High School. But there's not one in Kwaman or the Kwamankese traditional area. So President Mahama has promised that when he becomes president, he will prioritize the establishment of a secondary school there so that some equity, if you like, is achieved in terms of educational opportunities. With regards to the agrarian section, one of the problems they have is that they don't have a ready market for their produce. Indeed, 2 days ago, I happened to chance on a vehicle from Côte d'Ivoire that had come to buy orange at ridiculously low rates because the alternative is for it to go rotten. So there is a citrus factory set up in the Nkrumah era. They call it Rose, but it's falling into a state of disrepair. Now, something like that is a low-hanging fruit that government can get in there, or perhaps we can engage investors to get in there, revamp it, so that we can buy this produce of these farmers, so that they eke out a decent living. For the fisher folk, I think the problem has to do with premix, availability of premix.
The government has gone digital with premix. Now, all you need is a card.
For me, it is immaterial.
I went to Elmina where they did
for me, it is immaterial. The most important is that the
premix. You just need a card and you get premix. It's not a problem anymore.
For me, it is immaterial. The most important is that the premix should be available. Whether the means to doing that or doing it more efficiently.
Applaud them for digitizing.
I'm saying that, you see, that is beside the point. The key issue is that people are struggling to get the premix. So whether they hold a card or not, availability to the product is the key issue. The means through which they get it, for me, is immaterial. Now, it is not the management of it is not true transparent. There's some element of partisanship, and it is a major source of worry for the fisher folk. They also find that the inputs like outboard motors, nets are simply too expensive. Again, the environment within which they operate is not conducive to their profession. And these are matters that I want to look at. But for me, one of the biggest problems we have is roads, for instance. We barely have any motorable road in that constituency, beyond 1 or 2. I think that is something that we need to draw attention to. And as MP, I will make it my life's work to draw attention to this and insist that we get our fair share of it. There are also problems with education. There are problems with health. Unemployment is a major issue. And one of the things that I intend to highlight the most is the unemployment issue there. And I believe that this time round, having learned from the missteps of the past, we are likely to achieve victory. And once I win, I will represent them effectively. Certainly much more effectively than they have been represented now.
Wish you all the best, and thank you for joining us on Face2Face.
It's been a pleasure.
That's Felix Kwakye Ofosu. He's a former Deputy Minister for Information, also at Point Communication, Member of Parliament, hopeful for the Abura Asebu Kwamankese constituency. He's a special aide to former President John Mahama. My name is Umaru Sandamado. Thank you for watching Face2Face. Stay with us. This is City TV. It's your world.